Right, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lindsay Hamill. I'm the manager of school and volunteer docent programs at UCR Arts. If you've never visited UCR Arts before, we're the California Museum of Photography and the Culver Center of the Arts in downtown Riverside. Today is Third Thursday Talks, which is a monthly program where we feature artists, curators, performers, musicians, and more. And tonight we're going to hear from HOCKET, the cutting edge piano duo of Sarah Gibson and Thomas Kotcheff. They are Los Angeles-based composer-pianists who are dedicated to commissioning and performing contemporary music. So today they'll discuss their work and their newest project, hashtag What 2020 Sounds Like, with our co-hosts, Ian Dicke, composer and UCR Assistant Professor of Music, and Dr. Sheila Bergman, UCR Arts Executive Director. Before we start the program, we at UCR Arts would like to first respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Gabrielino, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work in these homelands. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll have time to get to those at the end of the program. And I'll now turn it over to Sheila.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'd like to first welcome Ian Dicke as my co-host for Third Thursday Talks, and I'd like to say a few words about his many accomplishments. Ian is a composer and associate professor of composition at the University of California, Riverside. His music has been commissioned and performed by ensembles and soloists around the world, including the New World Symphony, Alarm Will Sound, the Cabrillo Festival Orchestra, Paul Drescher, HOCKET, and pianist Vicky Chow, to name a few. In addition to his creative activities as a composer, Ian is also the founder and curator of the Outpost concert series at UCR Arts, the Culver Center of the Arts in Riverside, California. And Outpost presents dynamic performances that explores groundbreaking territory in contemporary music and connects Riverside's musical culture with artists across the national music landscape. And it was at the Outpost concert where I first heard HOCKET perform, and I am delighted that you are here. So now moving on to our guest this evening, HOCKET. As you heard a little bit before, that they are a cutting edge piano duo. They're based in LA and described by Mark Swed in the LA Times as brilliant, and by the New Yorker, an adventurous young ensemble. The members are Sarah Gibson here and Thomas Kotcheff, and they are both pianist composers dedicated to commissioning and performing contemporary music. They've performed in some of the most exciting music festivals across the country, including the Bang on the Can Summer Festival, at Mass Mocha, Mata Festival in New York City, the Center for New Music in San Francisco, Carlsbad Music Festival, etc. And I would also like to just give you a little bit of a background on both Sarah and Thomas. Sarah Gibson is a composer and pianist. Her works have received recognition such as the American Composers Orchestra Underwood New Music Readings, Victor Herbert ASCAP Award, NFMC Marian Richter American Music Composition Award, and first place in the Percussive Arts Society Composition Contest. She has received commissions from the Aspen Summer Music Festival and School, LA Signal Lab, the Bennington Chamber Music Conference, and soprano Lindsay Kesselman, among others. Gibson's music has been performed by members of Eighth Blackbird, the American Composers Orchestra, USC Thornton Edge, the USC Symphony, the Aspen Contemporary Ensemble, HOCKET, LA Signal Lab. I kind of feel like this is move HOCKET, Aperture Duo, and at various venues across the United States and in Europe. And Thomas Kotcheff is also a LA-based composer and pianist. His compositions have been performed internationally by the Riot Ensemble, Wild Up, New York Youth Symphony, Sandbox Percussion, the Argus Quartet, Lyris Quartet, the Allende Quartet, USC Thornton Edge, Oberlin Contemporary Music Ensemble, and the Aspen Contemporary Ensemble, amongst others. Thomas has received awards and honors from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Presser Foundation, the Aspen Summer Music Festival, BMI, ASCAP, and has been a composition fellow at the Los Angeles Philharmonic National Composers Intensive, the Aspen Summer Music Festival and School, the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival, and the Bennington Chamber Music Conference. And if you don't believe, there's pages and pages more of both of their accomplishments. So editing this down to this was a real challenge. So welcome both Thomas and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's just so wonderful to see the two of you. But before we begin our conversation, which we're all really looking forward to, we're going to play a few minutes of a piece called Remember Me. It's composed by Aaron Holloway Nam, performed by HOCKET, and the video is by 410 Media. So if we can take a look at that now, that'd be great. That was wonderful. That was great.
Thanks.
I wanted to keep on going on. You know, could you take a few minutes just to talk about HOCKET and what inspired the two of you to come together and form the ensemble? And also, what does HOCKET mean?
Absolutely. So Thomas and I both met, we were both in grad school at the University of Southern California. And we have a very similar sort of history. Yeah, there you go. A very similar sort of history in that Thomas was a piano major in undergrad. I was a composition and piano double major in undergrad. And then we both came to grad school wanting to major in composition, but being really passionate about modern music for piano and wanting to perform as much as we could. And so we kind of met each other in the new music ensemble at USC. And we started working together there and playing together there and just realizing that we had a very, like-minded trajectory. We loved working together. We had a ton of fun talking about music and diving into learning things together. And so we started brainstorming about forming an ensemble, and we just started looking for things for us to play. And we realized that really the 21st century and most of the 20th century have kind of a gap of repertoire for piano duo, for the piano duo ensemble. You know, we think of like piano for hands as like, you know, Mozart and Brahms and Beethoven and like these, you know, very kind of like backbone of the repertoire for like, you know, classical and romantic era music. And then once you get into the contemporary era, there's a few landmark works and that's about it. And so we saw this sort of like niche opening where it was like, you know, if we start to commission our friends, you know, as composers, we know a ton of composers. It was like, if we start to work with these composers we love and start working together, we could really create something that's not there.
Yeah, and so from the beginning, it's been at our core mission statement to expand and grow repertoire of piano duo.
Yeah. And I guess well, one other thing about us, that you didn't see that in that video, but you'll see a little bit later, we also like the idea of augmenting what the traditional piano duo could be. So rather than going to a piano concert where you know you're going to hear 88 keys for 2 hours and that's all you have, we offer toy pianos and melodicas and small percussion and inside the piano techniques, anything to just kind of change up the timbre. And then as far as the name of our group, you want to?
Yeah, so the word HOCKET, or to HOCKET, is a musical term from the Renaissance era, when two voices interlock musically to make a single line of music, like you're alternating notes on a single line. So I found it very fitting for me and Sarah to be a piano duo, and the idea of interlocking to make one unified voice.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I know that the talk tonight is primarily going to talk about or be looking at and the project hashtag what 2020 sounds like. So could you sort of launch that conversation by telling us a little bit about that project?
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I think last year when the pandemic hit and all the arts were canceled, you saw online a lot of people trying to figure out what to do and what to make and to sustain a life in the arts during a crazy, crazy time. And so, you know, Sarah and I put our heads together saying, what do we want to do and what do we want to make? And probably top of our list was to bring our community together and to bring our friends and our colleagues together and to make something with them. And so we started brainstorming on how we could do that. And so we started throwing out numbers on how many composers we should commission to write miniatures for us, responding to the pandemic, to everything that happened last year. And we began with 20 composers, and then we said, how about actually no 30? You know, we like this person too, maybe 40. And so we got to 50 composers. And honestly, we had to cut some people. There was that many friends we had who we wanted to include in this project. So we ended up with 50 composers commissioned to write 1 minute or less pieces reacting to anything that happened last year, or not, just to reflect and be whoever they wanted to be.
Yeah, I think it was really important to us, you know, understandably, there's a lot of like COVID-centric projects. And I think to us, we wanted, you know, I think I was thinking a lot about being empathetic towards artists that during the pandemic, it could also be really hard to make something, you know, like physically and emotionally. And, you know, I know I had a lot of friends that are very creative beings that were just like, I just, you know, it's enough for me to get up and put on clothes normally. And so I think that we felt pretty strongly that we just wanted kind of an open canvas, that it was like, however you feel like you can make something right now, we want to be a part of that. And you can respond to something in the moment or more abstract.
And we purposely set it up so that the composers had rolling deadlines, and we would turn the pieces around from getting them to rehearsing them to recording and making a video out of it, releasing it all within a week or two. So that way the pieces could really be almost like a journal entry to that day, that week in 2020 and in history. And then that's it. It can go away and be fine and just be a memory in a capsule.
Right, right. And it was, we should say too, like our goal was to make these performance videos, you know, less of, and performance videos, and then also an album at the end of all of this, so that we could be just fresh and right there and make it right then, that we didn't have to like reserve a hall to do a thing to, you know, we did them at home, we did it at his parents' house and, you know, took over his mom's living room for 4 months, you know, or whatever it was. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Ian, you were one of the composers, right?
One of the lucky ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have some pieces that from this project that we're going to play, and then you're going to talk a little bit about, correct?
Great.
Great.
So do we want to launch that right now and do the first piece?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I was thinking one piece, maybe before we play Ian's, we can talk to you after this, Ian, but one of the pieces that I think was very in the moment that we commissioned was by Alexander Elliott Miller. And his piece is titled BGA, Brianna, George, and Ahmad. And it was in direct response to the Black Lives Matter protest and, movement that was happening. And, I think it was the first piece we got.
It was the first piece.
It was the very first piece we got. So it was the very first one that we presented for the whole project. And I think, when we got that, to me personally, not only because it's our friend, but then also how important this music was, I think it was like all of a sudden I just realized like, oh, we're going to get some really special things during this project. There's going to be some really wonderful things that are going to be important for other people to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can listen to BGA.
Okay,
right now.
great.
So striking.
Yeah, I think it's really special. And a little like kind of nerdy insider thing too is that he uses just the notes B, G, and A throughout the entire piece. So it's a simple material, it's a simple motive, but quite powerful in how it's stated, I think.
Yeah, and being someone on the outside of this project, getting to experience all these pieces without knowing what they would sound like or which direction they would take. I agree. This piece was the first one I remember when it came out, and it did. I thought it set the tone. It made me think about how I would approach the project. Yeah.
I think it was interesting, and like maybe you can speak how if we talk about your piece next, Ian. Some composers when we approached this project, they were like ready to fire a piece off immediately at us from the moment that the project got going. They're like, I want next week, and I'm coming at one right now.
Right.
And other ones were like,
Locked and loaded.
give me 3 months to think about this.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was very interesting. Like, and this piece was Alex. Like he was within like days of us emailing him.
Yeah.
The piece was back. Was that piece which responded.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Ian, how did you feel? I wonder, like, were you like making art during this time?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else, everything collapsed, and to get that request from you, it was it was an honor, really. But then, right, about thinking about what to do in that space. I mean, going into the sort of esoteric world of the John Cage time container, that's how I kind of see the project. Like there are 50 time containers, and each composer, and they're not all quite the same length, but they're pretty much the same length.
Right.
And each composer is getting to fill it in this different way, and it is almost like being in a gallery, I guess, where each artist is having a similar amount of wall space. And so, I don't assume anyone watching this knows much about my music, but I've done all kinds of what's called programmatic music, that's about something or wants to at least get you to think about an issue and arrive at your own conclusion about it. But I will say for this piece, and I think it's just something about the time, obviously, it's such a profound event that I just wanted to do something sort of off like the heart sleeve. I don't know what to call it, but I just wanted to express how I feel, which is weird because composers, for better or worse, seem to want to avoid that, at least historically in the last 100 years, particularly. But I really just, it is how, and I'm sorry to say, it's how I feel still. I just feel very small in this situation. I don't feel that I can do anything meaningful to make it better for the ones that I love who are hurting, or people I don't even know who I wish I could help. It's just a feeling that I don't know, and that's how I came to the concept, if that is one, and then the music itself is just this kind of melodic music.
Well, the piece is meaningful to us for sure. And, I will say, I mean, we should listen to your piece next. And I think though, Ian, you're kind of hitting on to something that was so fun for us is I feel like we got this like morsel of each composer's true personality kind of in each of these little glimpses. Like it actually it felt more connected than I expected to, meaning that like when we got, it was kind of like having a pen pal or something where you were like, oh, suddenly this person, wherever they live, whether they're down the street and I haven't seen them for months or across the world and we haven't seen them for months, it suddenly felt like we have something that we can communicate on and talk about. And it made me feel close to a lot of the artists we were working with.
Yeah, very cathartic in general.
It's true. When you have such a short amount of time to say something, I mean, how do you say something in a minute of music?
Right.
Every note counts, every single note, which is why I think that's an interesting comment you made about how you're really seeing the true distilled characteristic of somebody. Because yes, if they took that challenge seriously, then yes, you probably did. Because every note counts. You really can't afford to have something that maybe doesn't fit.
Right. Yeah. Well, should we listen to How Small I Feel now? Great.
Should I explain those instruments?
Yes.
Yes.
So the instrument that was on the very top was a melodica, which is a wind instrument, technically. She was blowing air into it, and it's a little keyboard that makes a harmonica-like sound. And beneath that was a toy piano, which is actually a percussion instrument. Well, so is the piano, technically. But there's a little plastic hammers hitting metal rods. And these two instruments have actually really become part of the core of what we do. A lot of the sound world. Actually, we have other pieces that we'll share today that play these on these instruments. And we just really like how, and Sarah already alluded to this, how when we started our piano duo, we wanted to expand what that meant to be a piano duo. And so we encompass any keyboard instrument that we can put our fingers on and make music out of. And these two instruments has become a feature of what we do.
And I should say, I think, Ian, you were the first one to do melodica and toy piano of all of the pieces that we received. And you were a little earlier on. So it was amazing because, as you were saying, Ian, like watching the videos come in, I think most of the composers were keeping an eye on them. After you used melodica on the toy piano, we saw a lot more of that happening. They're like, oh, we can do that. Okay. And like making like this new kind of like keyboard instrument. Right. And then we just start being like, yeah, if you want to see how that's done, check out Ian's video. Go here.
It's true. We call it like organ manuals where you piled up on the organ.
Yeah.
You know, Ian was like one of the first to do that. And then we actually had a video today where it went all the way to having a piano, a toy piano, and a melodica all piled up on 3 levels.
Right.
So
well, full disclosure, I did actually have my daughter's toy piano and my melodica from who knows when. Everyone has one. You don't know where does it come from? It's like out of your dad's closet somewhere. I think that's where mine comes from. Anyway, I was
never
playing
had a
them both.
melodica.
I played them both, and I was, you know, trying. I'm not one to like to send things that are ridiculous, so I tried to, you know, play it myself to see if it fit well.
Well, and I mean, that's something that we've always loved, Ian, your music. And I think, you know, part of it is you're a great pianist too. And like there's, you know, we've always appreciated how you approach the keyboard instrument. And so it was really great to get that eye, you know.
And we can lead into Scott Lee's Dog Days, which is directly inspired by your instrumentation and does the exact same instrumentation, except for I'm playing the toy piano melodica duo stacked up. And Sarah and her piano part actually has some muted notes where he asked her to put inside the strings we have one. Yes. Great.
Here we go.
So here's one of our mutes. It's a sock filled with BBs. And so we place these on the strings and it creates this incredible muted sound.
Yeah.
So you hear it in this piece along with the stacked organ manuals of melodica toy piano.
Oh, so good. That's one of my favorites. I love that.
Scott's music always has a great groove in it.
Yeah. So are you continuing on with the project? Have you completed it? I know that you were putting it out to the world on a weekly basis or every couple of weeks, right?
We actually, so our goal is to do 3 a week, and some weeks we had 4. We did it for 4 months, 3 a week.
Okay.
So we ended the project by recording it in an album recording, which we did in December, and we're editing it right now. And this is just really to be kind of like the almost archival, you know, artifact for the whole project. And actually, we have a live performance concert of it next month on Piano Spheres, where we're performing 32 selections from the series, including Ian Dicke's piece on that performance. March 16th on Piano Spheres.
March 16th, okay. So we're going to attempt to put that in the chat so people can actually attend.
Fantastic. And on that performance, when we do them live, we try and group them up into like movements of 7 or 8, and then we play them without pausing to one another, and really to just again encourage the idea that these pieces are really all connected through this like kind of journal idea of turning a page on a journal.
Yeah.
Also, what is really interesting to me is how this would also be an introduction, as you say, to the different composers. If you're not familiar with their work, that I'm hoping that people that are listening to this music are going to then explore and the composers that are part of this project. I think that's a really cool part of this.
Absolutely. You know, I think one other just kind of like selfishly awesome part of this project for us is that we had so many composers that we've been trying to find projects to do with for years. And this allowed us to like just get a little taste of working with, you know, I mean, many of the composers, it was our first time working with them, whether or not we'd known them for a while. But that was really fun too, just to like make that extra step of a connection.
Yeah, and also it's become this really interesting for us record of what we do. And so we've done these lectures for college students who are writing for us now. And then we just can reference any of these videos of these 50s. I'm like, oh yeah, that thing, well, this person did it, and you can watch that, and,
right.
And we can direct them in all directions about what we do.
Yeah, it's like a master class, and like we're just like, go there.
The encyclopedia of what you can do with a piano,
yeah,
a toy piano and melodica. Yeah.
Exactly,
right,
exactly.
Right.
And more.
Yeah.
So some of the things you guys have just brought up, I'm sort of skipping to where I was going to go with this in the order of questions here, but I really would like to ask. So, all right, we're in the middle of the pandemic now. It's hard to make a prediction about things, but since you guys are, I mean, you really had a vision with this project and the way it was executed, and it's really savvy use of social media and the way it was disseminated. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on the future of sort of presenting and documenting new works, like, and how what 2020 sounds like fits into that vision.
Yeah, you know, when we came up with this project, one of the most important things that we talked about was that we wanted people to be able to access it as easily and simply as possible, like right on the phone. And these videos were designed to be looked at on your phone, on your computer, no extras, no paywall, no, you need a sound system, just this is the way you're supposed to look at it. And that was important to us, especially during last year and the time, and just, you know, and how much of us was out in the world, you know. I do think that, you know, this last year has led us down a lot of interesting discussions amongst ensembles and organizations about how this technology that we've all now learned how to use can be used going forward. You know, like the idea of us doing our own live stream was totally out of the question 2 years ago.
Right.
And now I've done a live stream and I couldn't believe it. And I got all the programs, I learned everything to do it. So how does that come into the fold is gonna be really important on how we continue to reach audience members, you know, next year and 5 years from now. Right.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, like I had never made a performance video before, you know, and I mean, it's like, you know, kind of a trial by fire, obviously, but I think that there is, if we're trying to look at things glass half full, I think there's something really beautiful about the accessibility that provides general audiences, is just to be able to access something without perhaps, you know, having to pay a $75 ticket to go see something or something along those lines. And I also think that it's really valuable, you know, there's this really beautiful thing about music being ephemeral, and that, you know, things happen once and then they kind of, you know, in a way that a piece is always living because it changes every time you do it. But it's also really valuable to have documentation and to be able to, you know, I think it will help the composers as much as it helps organizations, as much as it helps performers, because now you have kind of like a calling card too, that you're more able to say, here's what we do, can we come do this with you or for you, or can I work with you or whatever. And it makes it more tangible, I think. Right. I mean, I really do think that going forward, it's the audience member or listener should have any option or way of interacting with art the way they want to. If they want to come to the live show, great, we're there, we're doing it live. Right. If you want to watch a live stream, if you want to watch on your phone, if you want to dial in, whatever, do it. Like however you want to absorb art and let it affect you, that's the way it should be. And you should have a chance to do it. And I think it goes back, actually, Ian, I was so excited to hear you talk about, like, it's kind of like viewing these pieces in a gallery, because I think that that's such, I think a lot of composers talk all the time about the difference between, like, if you go to an art museum, you're always in control of how long you're standing in front of a piece of art. And then if you go to a concert, you have to sit quietly and clap when you're told to. And if you stand up in the middle of the piece, people might look at you funny. And I think that I would love more of that autonomy that you have from an art museum in the concert hall, you know? And so, yeah, not surprisingly, I agree with Thomas. Yeah.
Well, you know, classical music, besides the pandemic, is also facing a bit of a reckoning because of the social justice issues, like that we heard in Alex Miller's piece, which was done so effectively. And it's not that those of us in the arts ever had any intention on perpetuating these things. However, we have done so in our ways by being complicit in a certain, I forget the author that referred to it as the aesthetic apparatus, the way that the venue, the curtains in the venue, the behavior you're expected, the attire that the performers are wearing. It's all part of the aesthetic apparatus, which locks out, well, it could potentially lock out a lot of people. And that's why, of course, for many reasons, this project that you guys have developed and so well executed really kind of bypass so much of that. And I just hope that other ensembles, even larger organizations, can look at this as a successful, and to put a positive spin on it, sometimes live streams have better more eyeballs, so to speak, and ears than you would in a traditional concert. So
absolutely,
it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom, I think, about how we are redefining what it means to be a performer.
Right. Yeah.
I'm involved with the OI Festival, which they do a live stream every year, and I'm involved with the live stream and hosting it. And I think it's really great when concert members are at the show, they get tired, so they leave the show, go home, and put on their TV so they can sit on their couch. I'm like, great, that's your choice. That's the direct choice to absorb this art. Do it, fantastic.
Right, you might be a better listener, or absorbing it better once you're comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
If I may piggyback on this discussion a little, my job is to take it to a dark place, and then we emerge into a lighter place. So my dark question is, so this is a well-worn sort of topic in our field, but that classical music in general is in danger of, collapsing, dying. Put in your word of choice. Now, in the pandemic, certainly some of that maybe gives me at least more pause than it may have in other times. So what is your feeling about that? What is the future looking like for now? Both of you obviously have very bright careers ahead of you, but I just mean in general.
Yeah, I think the world always needs art, and I think that I think that we're all missing that a lot right now, the live essence of it and the community of it. And we can look at history of when things were dark, and a lot of great art came out of that. So I feel I'm definitely, in general, a glass half full type of person and an optimistic person. And I think people are always going to have the need to say things artistically. And I think people, in their darkest hours very often look towards music, visual art, and reading, literature, photography, whatever, in order to find, peace amongst the mayhem. So I have to say, actually last week, I went to, I was in the audience. I was the only person in the audience for an orchestra live stream. And I heard an orchestra play live for the first time in the past year. And the concert energy was there like I've never heard it before. It was like I'd heard the rehearsals and they were great. And then the concert was like, knock me off my seat, sort of like energy. And I was reminded how much I miss that, this like, you got to come hear this. We're all here and we're going to do this thing all at the same time. And like, seeing an orchestra of 60 people, wanting to do the same thing at the same time. I think that that's really poignant, and important. And I just don't think I don't think live music will ever die.
Yeah, it's true. I think we've been hearing the narrative of classical music is dying. How do we find the youth? Where's the youth, and why don't there's music anymore? And my thought has always been, well, I know that I love this music. We love this music. I know you guys do too. And I am 100 out of 100 passionate about this music. And I will run around town screaming about it, that this is the best thing on earth. You have to come check it out. And I know I've always just followed my nose in that way, whether it be from a small thing, like a piece I like or a project I like, all the way to like the whole genre, that I believe in this thing, and I will get my friends and my aunts and uncles to come and check this thing out, and I'll tell them why I like it. And hopefully that gives them a chance to like it too, and find their own, meaning inside of our music.
Yeah.
Community and conversation. I think it's important.
Yeah, and playing music of today reflects the world that we live in, and it reframes our world in ways that are helpful and ways that are just tickle our imaginations. And not having that would obviously be a bit of a problem. I miss going to things like LA Phil, and just
Oh,
seeing that many people make a massive, glorious sound on a stage.
right.
And I just hope that LA Phil also does wonderful programming and is really an orchestra that I consider one to look at when you think, well,
Right.
what's the future of the orchestra?
Right.
So we all hope that this all wraps up and we can get back in the hall.
Yeah, and I think, back to kind of your previous question too, Ian, I think that classical music, especially after the pandemic, is going to have to kind of catch up in a lot of ways, whether it's like through virtual streaming or live streaming or whatever it may be. So I think it could be interesting to see if this sort of like, art music sort of thing is even more part of the general fabric and conversation of an artistic world, just because they've had to learn in order to survive, they've had to catch up, with technology, so it could be new renaissance,
Mhm.
I think so. I hope so too. Yeah.
So we're close to looking to some of the questions that's come in from our audience, but I have a question for you, maybe one of the
Yeah.
last questions. What are some things that higher ed does well and not so well in preparing music students to be successful in the 21st century?
That's a good question. I think that's a lot has changed since Ian and Sarah and I went to school. Because when we were in school, there was very little help on how to build a career in music. I think that now that all three of us are involved in institutions, I think that we do our part to really help our students understand what it means to build a career right now. And to be perfectly frank, like we're talking technology and how important it is. Like our industry is changing so fast. No offense to my professors, they wouldn't know what the hell to do right now with making a career in music.
Right.
And so really you need someone who's young and is just figuring this thing out too, to say, hey, this works for us, we'll pass it on to you and this might work for you too.
Right. Yeah, I think, in that same spirit, I think all three of us, I'm sure here, have had teachers that have been very encouraging. And whenever we've started to go our own way, they will go, keep doing that. That's interesting and that's unique. And, like one of our mentors at USC, many of our mentors at USC, when we started HOCKET, they were at all of our first concerts, like they were there and supportive and a part of that community and, wanted to see us grow. But yeah, I think that one of the most important things that just has to be encouraged in higher ed now is that you have to wear many hats, whether or not you like it. You have to wear many hats. You have to be flexible. You have to be kind, and you have to have your own. You have to be driven and make your own projects and make them happen.
Yeah, a lot of institutions are revamping curriculum, and mostly just to like make it less. Don't pigeonhole the students.
Not cookie cutter.
Yeah, not cookie cutter. So now the student is encouraged to explore other music, make other music, improvise if you're a classical player, or play classical career if you're a jazz player. Like you have to open up yourself up.
Compose if you're a performance major.
Exactly. Yeah. And this leads a young student, and including us, like we're inspired by this all the time, to open up how you make music and how to build a career.
Right.
Well, that's great. Well, it's great to hear that things are really changing in response to how the world is changing.
They have to. They certainly have to. And I'm speaking from the other side of the coin as not just a composer performer, but also as a teacher. When I structure my classes this past year, it changed a lot. Yeah. I mean, I've taught Maximus P for many years, but now I'm sort of teaching it not from a view of you should know this because you're going to get that tenure track job, right?
Right.
Instead, you should know this because you're going to develop your own software and that'll be one of your income streams. Right. That is what I'm trying to teach my young students, and I do believe a lot of them that will be an income stream for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a class of 18 composers, and normally this class is for them to get music played by other people, and I made them play their own music, write a piece for themselves and record it and do different iterations of it, because the whole, shtick of the class was nobody, like, you have to make your own music right now. You have to find a way to make music happen for you without leaning on an institution.
Or the aesthetic apparatus. That's like another part of it. The composer is the genius.
Right.
From Europe, it turns out.
Right.
From Europe. And then the performer, interprets it. And that's what people, I think, you folks especially, of course, you're both amazing composers and obviously great pianists too. And it's just like, you guys can do all that and you're not beholden to any, bottleneck in that sort of old-fashioned way of communicating. So it's just great. I think that all performers, right, should do some composing and vice versa.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see it from many different sides. I think if you love music, it's great to look at it from every angle.
I have a question from an audience member, Danielle. She asks, how much of a role did visual aesthetics play in your pre-pandemic performances? Has the shift to virtual performances inspired you to explore this area more? Any fun experiments or any things you want to try?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that Thomas and I are really passionate about, that we've been passionate about from the beginning of us starting, is that whenever people came to one of our concerts, we wanted it to be an event, and we wanted it to feel like an evening that was really curated just for that evening. So we talk about theatricality a lot, and in some ways, that might sound more extreme, but like, also, it can literally just come down to, where do we move when? How do we move this toy piano? When is the smoothest part and the best way to sit down, stand up, and bow, like all this stuff. We really, because I think that visual aspect is a part of the intensity of a live concert. And, there's like, think about like a conductor holding up their baton at the end of a concert, and there's that silence, and then it falls, and that releases the tension. And, I think we think a lot about wanting to keep that really intense tension and excitement throughout the whole thing. So definitely visual in that way has played a part with our theatricality of how we put a concert together.
Yeah, I think inherent in a piano duo is a visual aspect, just two people, one piano, arms twisted, leaning over inside the piano, all sorts of things like that. And what I will say that we've known this going in the past, but when you're in a big hall, someone in the back can't observe that and can't interact with it. So I have been thinking about can we bring a camera on stage? Can we project, a different shot to a screen behind us? Can we find a way to have someone in the last row be really close to us and all tangled up with us as we are playing?
Because, I've had a lot of friends that have been to a zillion of our concerts, but through the videos, they're like, for instance, I normally almost always sit on the audience side of the piano bench. And one of my friends told me, they're like, I've never seen Thomas's left arm before, like from the concert hall. And like, it was really fun to look at it from the opposite angle. And that was really interesting. It was like, oh, right. Like, that's just like a whole nother lens that they get to see through this visual aspect. Yeah. And, I think we're also interested we've worked a little bit with a choreographer at some point, and like making kind of like a modular work that we like move very purposefully, not like dancing, but like, doing purposeful movement. And I'm really interested in that and hope we can do more of that too.
That sounds great. I have another question from Elizabeth. What made you choose the toy piano as a focus for your performances?
It's a good question. I had to go back to the very beginning of HOCKET when we first started, and we were actually building our very first program. And I just thought we should try and discuss how to get away from the piano a little bit. We both come from contemporary music with a lot of cool sounds, in our normal modern music concert. And we were just thinking, do we really want there to be one piano, two players on the keys the entire time? Maybe that's too much.
Right. And we've all seen that before.
We've seen that before. And so we just started just branching off and figuring out what we can bring into our duo to play. And we've done other things except for toy piano, but toy piano was really from the beginning just kind of stuck. And once we started getting that ball rolling and commissioning works for it, and then someone really virtuosic, and that started building up, it really is a self-serving prophecy.
Yeah, I think,
prophecy,
I think we're responsible for commissioning the only concerto that includes 2 toy pianos.
That's true, I think
yeah. So, and I think there's also this kind of like practical side about it that we liked, is that they're mobile, like we don't take our own pianos with us everywhere, but we can take our own toy pianos, and like we really love them, and like we cherish them. Mm-hmm. and it makes it fun because there's something that you can take around to jam with as well. Mm-hmm. That you can be a part of any concert with a melodica and a toy piano, even if there's no piano, which isn't normally a thing that pianists have the ability of doing. So that was really fun too.
Great, thank you. I have another question from Gary. How might you predict changes in musical style in newly composed classical music in the next 5 years? Specifically, have you seen a change in the past few years since you graduated from USC?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think the world is changing, and I go back to technology, like the access to music amongst young composers now is at a level which Ian and Sarah and I just didn't have growing up.
Like YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. I mean, my students know more music than I did when I was twice their age, And so just the influence of that, no matter who the student is and where they come from, it's in their head, and they're making things with that in mind.
Right. And I do think because of that too, something that I've seen and that I think we'll continue to see is that kind of the idea of style and genre is just kind of everything's possible. Like it doesn't really matter. You're choosing what you want to write for, you're choosing who you want to write for, and you're just doing your thing. And it's not so much, there's no real box that people are trying to fit in anymore, I don't think. And yeah, I mean, I just think that, music always responds to the time, like all music of history. You can look at historical events, whether it's, when the printing press was established or when World War II happened, and you can see how music responds that way. So I think, we'll continue to see that.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm looking at, let's see. And somebody commented, I love the toy pianos. Thank you, Charlotte. I do too. So both of you talked about teaching. So tell us what you're doing now in terms of teaching.
Yeah, so Thomas and I both actually teach. The LA Phil has a high school composition program called the Composer Fellowship Program. So we both teach there. We have 18 young composers that we teach about every Saturday, and we coach them on works that they're writing in a normal year for the LA Phil or LA New Music Ensembles. And this year, smorgasbord of things that they're doing. So that's really fun. And then I'm also an assistant teaching professor in composition at UC Santa Barbara. So there I teach composition, and I also run the new music ensemble there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, I think that teaching has always been a part of what we've done from the beginning, from workshopping student works as HOCKETs to, and music special in that way that, you learn it through a direct teaching from someone else.
Right.
And so I don't know, I've always thought it was really important just to be in the lineage of I got information and now I want to pass that information on.
Right. Yeah.
That's great. So the workshop that you're doing with the LA Phil, it's high school students?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how is it working with high school students? I mean,
oh man, it's so great.
How is it like technically, like with the computers, or is it like, how is it general, like emotionally?
We'll do the technical and then the emotional after.
Oh, technical.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're on Zoom, and so we all meet as a group, and we have what's called community hour, where very often we have like a guest that comes in and works with the students, talks to the students, and then we break off into subgroups with Thomas, me, or our other colleague, Andrew Norman, and kind of have like group master classes. I will say one thing that I've thought a lot about during the pandemic is, and Ian, I don't know if you feel this way too, but composition is kind of the one area in like performance and like classical performance or major that is kind of okay on Zoom, because like they're sharing their like, program of what they're writing. They're sharing Sibelius or Finale or, a PDF of what they've handwritten down. And most of a composition lesson is talking and a little bit of listening. So it's very different from like having to listen to an oboe over Zoom, or something like that. So I think we've been fortunate that, teaching composition lessons, of course, I would much rather be in person, but it's been all right, I think.
I miss the piano.
Oh yeah, I do
miss
too.
having the piano, and you really cover a lot more ground that way.
True.
And but I'm really controlling as a teacher, so I actually edit their scores in front of them.
Yeah.
But I always tell them, I'm just doing this, and if you come back next week and it doesn't look like this, that's fine.
Right,
This is my way of communicating that with you efficiently and quickly.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely miss that tangible side as well.
Yeah, it is. And then, it's good for the students to play for you too, if they have that skill. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the emotional side of working with high school students.
Yeah, it's a very strange time for them as well. A lot of them are missing their high school senior year, and they're trying to navigate this world like we are, in their own high school way. So I think there is a lot of like dealing with college students as well, like days where they just don't really want to do anything, or they may be down, or and so you're also part their confidant, like therapist, like chatting with them about what's going on, and
but I think it's really like what Thomas was saying. I think it can be really powerful and really special to feel like you're imparting some sort of creative inspiration or something in these students to help them get out of ruts or whatever it may be. And so that's really nice.
Well, we're hitting that hour. Ian, thank you so much for being the co-host. It's great to see you. I can't see you in the Culver Center for the Outpost concerts.
Hopefully next year. But I thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. This has been great. And Thomas and Sarah, we could go on for hours. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing more of your project, as well as other projects that you're going to be creating in the future, and to see you live in a performance will be wonderful too.
Thank you. We look forward to it as well. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Our pleasure.
I just wanted to thank everyone as well, and look forward to seeing you again in person one day. And I just wanted to also thank the Marjorie and Glenn Thomas Memorial Fund. Third Thursday Talks are made possible by their generous support. And hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you again.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks all.